This is the Barbell Therapy and Performance Podcast, where traditional healthcare is redefined to help listeners achieve peak performance, accelerate recovery, and elevate overall health. Hosted by Dr. Brett Scott, a doctor of physical therapy and national strength coach, this podcast explores the worlds of fitness, alternative medicine, and holistic health. Each episode uncovers innovative strategies and practical solutions for those seeking to enhance their quality of life when conventional methods fall short. It is our firm belief that every living thing has potential, and it is our mission to help you find that potential.
Welcome back to the Barbell Therapy Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Brett Scott, and with me here today is Tony Pica.
Love it.
Right this time, right?
You got it right.
Yes. So Tony is the former owner of Architect Fitness and the founder, and we did an episode a while ago about big butts and gym culture, and we talked about a bunch of different things. So today we decided to have Tony come back on, and we're going to talk a little bit about kind of successful long-term results in the gym, staying motivated, even if you are a trainer. We've both been working in the gym industry for quite some time, and trying to stay motivated sometimes is quite hard. So we wanted to talk about that and just kind of a lot of what I've seen as a coach over the years of the different things people do and the differences I see between what makes someone successful and what makes someone not quite get to where they want it to be in the long term. So Tony, thanks for your time today. Also, thanks for the sweet new camera.
You're welcome.
An hour to figure out, but we got here. So yeah, where would you like to start here today, Tony?
Yeah, I think that what really inspired this topic for me was I was getting a massage actually, and I was speaking with my massage therapist who was asking me about the gym, and she's been going and kind of struggling with her weight and not really seeing the results that she was expecting it to get. And I was asking her about what she's doing, and she's mostly doing basically just running at this point in time and doing a little bit of machine training at like a Globo gym. And I was just explaining to her a lot of the benefits of strength training, and she was telling me about how, she just doesn't really enjoy that type of training. And I said, that's fine. Like, the best type of training you can do is the type of training that you don't hate. And I would say, as someone that started in the gym in around 1998, started coaching other people around 2005, one thing I've learned over all that time is consistency is probably the most important ingredient. And the easiest way to be consistent is to not loathe your time in the gym or outside or whatever it is that you're doing. And you can have the best program in the world, but if you don't do it consistently, it's not going to produce results. And on the flip side of that, we see people all the time who are doing goofy stuff in the gym, half reps, not really, doing things the quote unquote right way, but they've been going for 15 years and they've been, doing some form of intense training, whether it's the right type of training or not, and seeing results. And sure, maybe, their time could have been better spent. They could have gotten even better results if they were doing the right training, or maybe would have less pain or less injuries or whatever it is. But the consistency is the most important part. And so I think that's one thing that the fitness industry hasn't really solved yet. It's a puzzle that we haven't found all the pieces for, because really when it comes down to it, people argue about keto and carnivore and vegan and strength training and cardio and zone 2. And it's like, we kind of know the science. The science isn't really that debatable at this point. Like, we understand the mechanisms of all these things, but we haven't really figured out that secret sauce to like keeping people motivated, I think.
Yeah. And there's a couple things. Well, I put a lot of thought into this before we sat down to talk about it. So I've got some key things to kind of go over here, but I think, the big things are like looking at why you're there and just seeing people who are there for the long term. They see past the short term aesthetic things first and foremost, right? So like, for me, I might have got started for the wrong reasons per se, but the reward it still gave me and the way I felt about myself is kind of what made me stay for so long. So like, yeah, when I started, like I was 14 years old, I was overweight. I didn't like the way I looked. I wanted to, get more girls and this and that. And then, so like, that was my reason for starting. But anytime I went to the gym, like I felt accomplished. I felt satisfied. I felt like I had done something for myself. I was, making progress in a new way. And just that being able to sit there and feel good about yourself is really like what made me keep showing up. And I saw results and they were slow, but they were there nonetheless, because I really put forth that commitment up front. And there's a period of time, I was super obsessive about like performance results and aesthetics and the way I looked and everything. But at the end of the day, like I no longer really care about those. Like once I got into weightlifting, like the way I looked and things didn't matter as much as like how much can I just put on this bar and lift it, which is a big part of like the mental health side of things too and what you're going to be doing. But
I think your journey is, I think any young guy that's going to the gym or has gone to the gym probably felt some way very similar. So I started in powerlifting right away, which is obviously a more performance oriented pursuit rather than just aesthetics. And I competed, I did my first competition at 13 years old, but even still, like when I got out of high school and gained a little bit of weight in college, that's what happens when you go to college, gain that freshman 15 or whatever. Then I was like, I want to get jacked and ripped. So I get the attention of women. And you quickly learn that women don't actually care about big muscles, but
no.
But yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to that experience for sure. But it's a good gateway drug, but it is very low IQ training, I think.
Yeah. So I think the motivation part is part of that, of like, how do you do this successfully long term? Is your motivation has to be more than skin deep. And it should be about you valuing your quality of life in some way, living longer, living easier with less disability, feeling more confident in yourself and that you're capable to do things that maybe other people can't do or don't want to do even. I think that's a big piece of it, as well as people are like, oh, I'm doing this for so-and-so, and I'm doing this for my wedding, or I'm doing this for my grandkids or whatever. And it's like, no, this should selfishly be about you. Like this is for you and your body. Like maybe you want to do this so you can do these things, but that's still so you can do them. Like your grandkids aren't going to care that you're going to the gym or whatever. And you can't think that. It's really about what is that internal drive for you to do it, because in the long term, I don't think anyone can show up to the gym for anyone else every day of the week to be successful long term. It has to be for you. And like you said too, it's like what is the best type of exercise? Well, it's the one that you're going to show up and do every day.
Right. Yeah, I agree with pretty much all of that, but I can't help but wonder if a lot of times we just click into this zone and we come up with the why kind of after the fact. Like we have that intuitive kind of motivation to be consistent. And then when someone asks us why or how we do it, then we find something to ascribe to that. Because, I think everyone who has either broken a bad habit or built a good habit can relate to, you kind of just one day just start doing it. And when you fall out of those good habits, you think back to, man, how was it so easy for me to just do it all the time? How do I get back to that zone? But I am a huge fan of tracking metrics because, like you said, it has to be more than skin deep, because there are very few things more motivating than winning. And so people don't get on the scale at the end of a month of a new program or lifestyle change and see that they've lost 10 pounds and quit. People go, I wanted to lose 10. I only lost 4. This isn't worth it. I quit. So winning is like the biggest motivator. So if you're not giving yourself those measurements, whatever those may be, and that can be a plethora of things. It doesn't just have to be one metric. It can be waist measurement, weight, a particular weight that you're lifting. Maybe you are tracking your sleep and your sleep's improving, or whatever it is, as long as you have some metrics to show that you're making progress, right? Because it's just like work. If you were like working in a sales position and you were going into the office 8, 10, 12 hours a day every day and you weren't making any sales, you'd probably quit that job. But if you were crushing it and you were making all kinds of money, you wouldn't care how hard you were working. You would just keep going because it's working, right? So definitely tracking the metrics is super important. And like you said, just it's about liking what you're doing. If I said, hey, there's 2 people here, we want each of them to walk every single day for an hour for a year, and one person loves walking and the other person hates it, which one do you think is going to stick with it? It's not a trick question. It's not a difficult answer. So yeah, liking what you do is so important.
I want to go off of that too. So yes, being held accountable by measurements and things are super important, especially to people usually come into the gym with this idea of, and it's glamorized by marketing and social media and everything, of get on this program that, I actually saw a pretty cool thing the other day that, more plates, more dates.
Yeah. Yeah.
He did a thing on Gerard Butler, like prepping for 300 and all the gear he was probably, or for people that don't know what gear is, steroids he was on, because like he did an analysis of him in movies leading up to that role, and he had a few roles close by to 300, and then like a couple years later, and he was like back to like him old self, and it's like you can't do that. It's like, yeah, we did the 300 workout in this horrible garage gym. It was hot and uncomfortable every day. It's like, cool, but those results are just, they're not real. Like,
right.
The best.
And I think they added some CGI to their physiques.
There's a ton. Yep.
Yeah. In addition to, yeah.
But, I saw a thing the other day. It was like a natural bodybuilder, like at the top of the charts, is putting on maybe 2 pounds of muscle a year. So when you see these guys putting on like 30, 40 pounds of muscle, it's not realistic. It's probably not healthy. And we shouldn't just be doing it for that, because it's not realistic. It's like, well, what about your blood pressure and your waist circumference and those risk factors that tie into that for cardiac disease?
This is a great time to jump into something I wanted to bring up, which is a little tangential, but obviously people who know me know I have a crazy health history, with all kinds of complications with, started with a heart arrhythmia I was born with, ended up with a pacemaker and significant exercise restrictions. And I think one of the reasons I learned the very hard way, it's difficult to stay motivated when you can't do the type of training that you want to do. And for me, that was always strength training. And so I can't really do that in earnest anymore. And so my own health has certainly, taken a huge hit because of that. But it's funny because, I will see people make comments either about myself or other people who they deem to be not to their aesthetic standards, oh, you're overweight, you're fat, you're obese, whatever. All of the really legitimate research on body weight and health outcomes is BMI. And which is literally just height, a combination of height and weight. Most of the research doesn't say anything about muscle mass or fat, body fat percentage. Now, obviously, I think we all recognize that having lean tissue over body fat, non-contractile tissue is preferable for a number of reasons. We know that, muscles are more insulin sensitive. They burn more calories at rest. There's a whole host of benefits. However, there is some data to show that being 250 pounds of solid muscle is probably also not healthy for you. A lot of those people suffer from very similar chronic health issues like sleep apnea and other things. And so with men especially, there's a lot of talk about women's self-consciousness and the images that they're shown in the media, but it doesn't often get talked about with the men, which is like men are we are taught we need to be these big hulking masses of, muscle and ripped and lean. And, I think that also has a negative effect on the culture of men and just men's health in general. And it is unrealistic. I can't even begin to tell you how prolific the use of performance enhancing drugs, whether it be steroids to have bigger muscles or some other drugs to have lesser body fat, how prevalent that is. And what's really interesting too is like back in the day, when I was coming up in the fitness industry, you weren't big or lean unless you were competing. And people didn't care about you unless you were competing. And you had no audience unless you were competing. And so even though there was plenty of steroid use and that kind of thing going on back then, it wasn't like now where you can just be some nobody, have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of followers on a social media platform, juicing your mind out and reaching, influencing so many young people. And you really haven't done it's for nothing, really. You know what I mean? Like, you're not a competitive athlete. You're just doing it to, sell your supplements or whatever your discount code is. And to compound the issue, the photo and video editing techniques now are so easy. There's apps on your phone that can make your butt look bigger. They can make your waist look smaller. Oh, yeah. There's a great Instagram account. The guy's name is GoobU2, and he's a strength coach, and his entire account is dedicated to calling out people that doctor their photos. And he'll like zoom in and show you, how he can spot it. And what's really unfortunate about the whole situation is I would say at least half of the people he features are people who are supposedly promoting body positivity or just loving yourself how you are. And then they're the ones doctoring their photos. And it's like, that's not even you. That's not even real. You made your waist look smaller. You made your shoulders look bigger, whatever, for men, they're usually blowing up their biceps. And for women, they're usually snatching in their waists. And, if you're just like some person, you have no influence, you're posting your own photos, you want to change, you want to doctor your photos, whatever. But to like actually espouse, love yourself, body positivity, and then do that, that's like reprehensible to me.
Yeah, for sure.
I know there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, so I think the thing people need to have is maybe less expectations for themselves too. So what I was getting at is, we see all these things in the media and on social media about, gain 40 pounds of muscle in 5 months by doing this celebrity's workout that he did for this movie or whatever, or take this, weight cutting supplement to do this. And it's like, well, and then people come to us and they're like, I want to lose 40 pounds in the next 3 months. And it's like, well, like, you have a full-time job, you're a parent, you have 2-3 kids at home, a full-time job, and you've never worked out, and you don't even know if you like it that much, and you don't have more than like an hour 3 times a week. Like, let's put the goal to 15 pounds or 5 pounds to start, and let's go there, because losing 5 pounds and having your blood pressure improve truly sounds vastly better if you came in even expecting nothing. Like, I'm just going to go to the gym and try this for 3 months and see what happens. And I'm going to be diligent about improving my nutrition in certain aspects, and just showing up to the gym and giving it my all for an hour versus I went to the gym expecting to lose 40 pounds. I only lost 15. I didn't get to where I want. Now I'm going to quit because I didn't get where I expected.
Yeah, that makes me think of three things I want to touch on there. So first, just like you said, it goes back to winning. Winning is motivating, and winning is subjective. Like, you can change the definition of winning. So if your goal is to lose 40 pounds and you only lose 20, you lost. Like, you're a loser. You know what I mean? Like, you did not hit your goal. Now, some people might go, you know what? That's still great progress. But other people, I've literally seen it, got into the best shape of their lives, but it's still not quite to the vision they had in their head, and they thought this didn't work, which is insane. Or not insane, but it's unfortunate. So if you go in with the idea of, I want to lose 5, I want to lose 10, and then you lose 8, like, you're going to be satisfied with that, right? Like, you're getting so much closer to your goal. Secondly, to your point about celebrities, it's not even just celebrities now, because if you go find some 25-year-old woman who is an influencer and has 500,000 Instagram followers, that is her full-time job. Training is her full-time job. Maybe some of these people are doing it as a side hustle, but it's like, go find me a fitness influencer that someone looks up to that's 45, has a day job, has a family. You know what I mean? Like, those people don't exist. Like, the entire influencer industry is all people in their 20s. A lot of them are doing, their full-time income is coming from social media. And so, again, they're not a celebrity, quote unquote. They might seem like, oh, they're just a regular person. That's why I love her so much. That's why I love following her account. It's like, no, she makes her money by making workout videos or training programs and promoting them through her workout videos. Like, that's her entire life. So again, it's not a realistic representation of how the rest of us have to go about our day.
But what you should look at is look at what their coaches and things look like,
right,
that are working a full-time job, that do know what they're doing as far as health and fitness, and they're probably bought into, decent nutrition and things, and I'm sure they're working out appropriately.
Right.
But look at what they look like, that they don't have the time to do fitness for themselves full-time.
Right.
That's probably a little more realistic.
Absolutely. And to the third point that you brought up, so this came up the other day. So again, going back to those who know me, one of my favorite things to do is to debate people. And there's some guy that I casually know who posted something about fitness on his Facebook page. And so one of his friends made some comment that I thought I could just tell this guy was kind of a shithead. And I was like, I have to say something. And so it was about fitness, right? And I made this comment, and I was like, what you said was very ignorant. Here's why. And the first thing people do, they're going to go look at your profile, right? And this guy looks at me, and he's like, oh, well, you're fat. Like, you don't know anything, blah, 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 blah. And I said, well, I was, willing to have a conversation based on the science here. But if you want to if you want to have a dick swinging competition about who's accomplished more in the fitness industry, I can promise you that's not going to go well for you. And what have you ever done? You've never done anything, blah, 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 blah. And he said, I've trained 3 people to get ready for a bodybuilding show. And I was like, oh my God. Yeah, geez. I was like, let me text some of the Olympians in my phone, see if they think that's impressive. Like, it's just, and so what you said about the blood pressure made me think of this, because it's like, we know that, like, generally speaking, healthy weight loss is not linear. First of all, you might lose no weight this week, 3 pounds the week following, a pound the week after that. But if you spread it out over a long period of time, we typically see about 1 pound per week of weight loss for healthy weight loss, maybe 2 to 3 pounds if you're very, very, very overweight. So if you have, let's say, 100 pounds to lose, which some people do, that could potentially take you years to accomplish, right? So you have somebody, let's say they weigh 300 pounds and we want to get them down to 200 pounds. Now, this person has been in the gym for a year and they've lost 50 pounds. That's no small feat. In fact, that's an incredible example of consistency and hard work. And in that time, they've probably brought their blood pressure down to a normal level. They've probably brought their cholesterol down to a normal level if they had those issues to begin with. Because we know that, you can make improvements in your blood pressure in as little as like 4 weeks. We've seen, you can make improvements to your cholesterol in 90 days. Now, you take that person who's 250 pounds, who's been killing it, and you show them to somebody like that guy. And what is that guy going to think? That person's fat, that person's lazy, that person's not motivated. And unfortunately, the way that guy thinks is the way a lot of us think. Even if we're in the industry or not, we see somebody who doesn't fit what we think is the ideal, and we kind of project that in our attitudes and the way we treat people. And it's like that person who's lost those 50 pounds could potentially have worked harder and been more motivated than the person with six-pack abs who's just naturally lean. It goes to the gym a little bit to maintain.
Yep.
And so I think part of the motivation thing comes from, it does have to come from within, but I do think there is like a social element where it's like, if the whole world's telling you suck, that's also very demotivating sometimes. And some people can flip that and be like, I'm going to use that as motivation to prove people wrong, but that's not always the case. And so I think that's an interesting, it's a problem that needs to be addressed, I think.
Yeah. And to go off that too, like we just did that social media post on running and wearing Hoka's, and I think it's still, this post will not die. It's over 100,000 views now.
I love it.
And yeah, it started out with some constructive comments from people, and then a couple like big time runners got involved with it. And yeah, the hate that I even got, just like, we do these social media videos kind of off the cuff in the gym when we have a minute. And I was in the clinic wearing jeans that day, and like people were making fun of me for wearing jeans and the sneakers I was wearing, and that I don't look like a runner, and that like I have no foot to, or no leg to stand on because I don't look like a runner. It's like, who's gatekeeping who can be a runner or not? And like, little did they know I'm actually training for a half marathon. And like, I actually just ran a 6:47 mile the other day, which is like pretty fast for someone.
That's not slow. Yeah.
That's not slow. So it was like, yeah, like I have 7 years of education and training in this, and the same amount of time working with runners and things. So I am educated. I do know these things, but like, yeah, why are we judging people based on the way they look or what they can and can't do? But
well, that brings up another interesting point. And so a funny story, I was organizing my office and I came across this box of mini DV tapes. And so this is what camcorders would record to just before we switched to SD cards. So this is, again, showing my age here, but and I was like, oh wow, I have all these tapes. It's like, who even knows what's on here, And so you have to have a camcorder to play them back. It's not like I have a mini DV tape player laying around. So, and they don't make these things anymore. So I had to hunt one down. I found one used online. And of course, people know that they're harder to get. So I had to pay like $200 for the stupid thing. And, but it came with a kit so I can like plug it into my computer and like pull the footage off. And I had a blast the other day just going through all these old tapes. And I was like vlogging back in like 2004. And I think this was before even YouTube was a thing. And I was like, wow, I should have stuck with this. I could have been a huge influencer. But there's a bunch of, I have a bunch of workout videos where I just brought my camera to the gym with me and filmed myself working out, which is hilarious to think about because in 2004, 2005, there were no smartphones with cameras. And so I'm walking into the gym with this like big, camcorder on a tripod, and people thought I was nuts. And it was very awkward because now I think it's normal to see people setting up a video. But back then it was like, what are you doing? But I was in great shape. I was like 170-ish pounds. I was walking around at around 10% body fat. I did cut down a little bit less than that at one point, but I think that was kind of like my normal, just like training weight. I was deadlifting, close to 500 pounds. I was squatting over 400 pounds for reps. And 170 pounds body weight, 10% body fat, early 20s, that's pretty good. And I was training people then. And I look at that guy and I think that guy was an idiot. You know what I mean? Like, I know more now as a nearly 40-year-old fat guy that hardly takes care of himself than I did at 24, 22 in really great shape. And people probably thought, oh, I want to look like that guy. So it's not like as I got older and fatter, I got stupider. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think that's so funny for someone to say that, like, you don't look like a runner. I mean, obviously, just like anybody else, your health and fitness has waxed and waned, but recently you've dropped a bunch of weight. Your training's been going well. Like, you look great. You look like a normal, healthy guy. You know what
thanks,
I mean?
Tony.
And so it's like, it's insane to me that someone will look at you and be like, "Oh, you don't meet my criteria, so you're an idiot." That's how so many people think, and it's so short-sighted. And I can't help but wonder how much good information people are passing by on because they can't let go of their biases.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And people don't know, these people don't know I lost 40 pounds and just have been running actually for about a year now. So
has it been that long? Yeah.
Yeah. I started running back last June. So we're catching up on that.
Let's talk about that really quick. What was your secret to success? Because 40 pounds of weight loss is not insignificant. So what did you do? How long did it take you?
Oh boy. Okay, here we go. So we'll backtrack a little bit. So prior to this, I went about 3 years I went almost a year with an undiagnosed parasitic infection, which, for anyone that doesn't know what that is, you can get them from anything. Like, we think it was probably for poor food preparation in a restaurant or something, but started having all these weird GI symptoms, literally to the point where, like, I thought I had cancer or something. I was gaining weight uncontrollably, and like, I was still maintaining, like, it's the thing, I've just done fitness for so long that it's part of my life. There's no question about it, where I was still training even though there was no reward there. It's what I do. It's what I know. It makes me feel better mentally that I'm still accomplishing something. So, still training. I put on 35, 40 pounds over the course of maybe a year and a half or so. And I was in a relationship that was very stressful because of external things that were out of our control at the time. And my gut was in severe dysbiosis to the point, like, I wasn't sleeping well. My hormonal system shut down too. I wasn't, like, literally I would eat food and it would come out whole on the other end. Oof. TMI, but like, that's like what my body wasn't doing. It wasn't digesting or absorbing nutrients.
Right.
So fast forward a couple years went through functional medicine things, got things squared away from a symptom standpoint, still having issues though. Sometimes with the GI system, and then still not able to lose weight. And then I went to another practitioner group, and they did some genetic testing on me. So they did all this stool sample other things, and we did adrenals. They did a intracellular metabolic assay to see, because a lot of times, like with blood work too, what happens is we're just testing what's in the blood. We're not actually testing what's going into the cell. So they did an intracellular assay, showed me some interesting things about my nutrition that we needed. And then the biggest thing was we did genetic testing, and epigenetic testing. So I basically was told I have two genes that one basically says, because what was happening with me too is, I was up to about 235 pounds, and
well, I didn't realize that was your peak. I thought you were closer to the 200 mark. No, you wore it well. You didn't look that heavy, if I'm being honest.
Thank you. I'm about 200 now.
Okay.
So,
wow.
Yeah, I'm waxing and waning between like 198, 203. But So the genetic and epigenetic testing came back. I had been doing all this dieting, reverse dieting, tracking my macros, trying to figure out, I'd get down to 2,000 calories. I still wasn't losing weight at 230 pounds, working out 4 days a week and playing hockey and like eating pretty clean. And this genetic testing came back that said, yeah, you actually need to be at a 20% additional deficit from what like is ever prescribed based on like your metabolic profile just says like you have a slower metabolism than most people. So with that, I started doing intermittent fasting just because I don't really care for breakfast anyways. I'm not that hungry in the morning. I'm stimulated by work. So I just eat later in the day so I don't go to bed hungry. Mm-hmm. And then the other gene I had was saying that I basically need to do about an hour and a half of cardio a week to turn on my fat burning metabolic pathways and actually lose weight. So basically, long story short, is I shut my mouth and started running.
So you increased your output and decreased your input.
Yep. Yeah. So
shocker.
Yeah, but it was like I had to get down to 1,800 calories a day at 230 pounds to lose weight.
Yeah,
which most people, everyone, like anytime I got to 2,000, I was like, no, you're not eating enough. Eat more, and I would, and the scale wouldn't really move up or down; it would just stay the same. So this actually goes back to the conversation I had with my massage therapist, and she was talking about PCOS. And there's this belief about PCOS where if you have it, your hormones are out of whack and you can't lose weight. And, people a lot of times take that and say, well, see, calories in, calories out. It's not real. It's not a thing. It's like, well, okay. It is.
Calories in, calories out is always the thing. You always have to be in a calorie deficit. Where people get confused is what is a deficit for you might be much, much lower than you think it is. And I totally understand if that's the case, that sucks. And I feel for you, but that does not change the laws of physics. You still need to be technically in a deficit to lose weight. Now, you might want to pursue strategies that help you naturally boost your metabolism so you can eat more food and be in a deficit. But that does not change the fact that it really just comes down to calories in versus calories out. You have to be in a deficit to lose weight.
Yeah. So for me too, it was like, I've always been wired a little bit different, I think, in certain ways of being driven to do things. So for me, it was like, okay, these are the cards I've dealt. This is what I'm going to do. Just like, and 235 pounds, like I wasn't sleeping good. My training had sucked and I couldn't, it was weird. I was at this point, I was having dreams like 3 to 4 times a week where I was like out in the woods trying to like run away from something and couldn't, like my legs were giving out and like my lungs shut down and I couldn't run. It was like the most bizarre thing.
You're having nightmares about not being able to perform.
Yeah. And it was like, but I wasn't even trying to run at this point. But then like I got on the treadmill and I was like, I couldn't even do 3 minutes. But I went in, I didn't have an expectation of being a runner. So I was like, I'm just going to get started with this. I'm going to put time in. And I was like, I'm going to start wherever I start. And it was going to be zone 2. So like walking, brisk conversation, like get on the bike for 30 minutes and do that. And then I'd run on the treadmill for 3 minutes and then walk for a minute or two. Yeah. And then another 3 minutes a couple times.
There's I can't remember his name, but there's a marathon coach that has actually helped people improve their marathon times by structuring in walking into their marathon. So essentially you have people who literally could run sustain for the 26 miles, but their pace was so slow that if they walked a little bit, then their running could be that much faster and actually produce a shorter marathon time. So, people sometimes poo-poo walking, but it's like, for most of us, it's probably the best place to start.
Yeah. And, that's what it was. It was just like, started with like intervals and it was like 3 minutes and then did 4 and then I did 6 and then 8 and then 10 and then
now you're running sub 7 minute miles.
I could run 12 and then And then I was like, well, if I can do 12, I can do 20. So I did 20. And then I was like, if I can do 20, I can do 25 and then 30. And at the point I was like, let me go out on the road and run. And then one day, this past Christmas, we were down in Florida with my family, and I was like, all right, I'm going out for a run. And I had flown in the day before. We were out drinking late that night, but I was like, I need to go for a run. Like, this is what I'm doing now. And put my shoes on, put my hat on, my headphones in, my little running bag thing, and got outside, and my Whoop was like, you're at 1%. I was like, there's literally a grim reaper when you get to 1%. Like, I just, it's like, don't train today. I was like, I'm just going to go see what happens. Right. No, I didn't have any expectation for myself that day. Yeah. I was like, I might run down the street, feel like shit and come back, or like I might do 3 miles. So I got out. It's just new environment, new space. I'm on the beach running, and did 3. And I was like, I'll go another mile, get down to the port. And I'm at 4.5 now. And my dad had told me, he's like, yeah, just tell me, I'll come pick you up if you want. I was like, okay. So he calls me. He's like, yeah, do you want me to come pick you up? I was like, yeah, that'd be great. Like, now I'm dying, or I feel like I'm dying at the moment. He's like, all right, cool. Yeah. He's like, we just went to lunch. And so let me know when you get back to the house and I'll come pick you up. And I was like, I guess I'm running 8 miles today.
Jeez.
So I ran all the way back, and I did 8 miles at 1%. I was like, if I can do this, I can totally do a half marathon.
Yeah.
But moral of the story is, and I see this with a lot of athletes too, is like those days people come in of like, it's a heavy day or a max out day or competition, and they have these big expectations and have put a ton of anticipation into things. They don't end up doing as well as when, like, sometimes you feel like shit, or like you just don't care as much as like when the best results come to you. And that's always been that way for me with lifting too. Of like, some days I wake up, I'm tired, I didn't sleep well, whatever. And I'm like, it's not going to be my best. And then you go in and just feel it out, and you crank out a really good workout.
Yeah. It's that old saying, how you feel is a lie. And as much as I am into metrics, I do have some reservations about the heart rate variability and the Whoop stuff. I mean, I think it's cool. It's good data to have, but I do think like some people live and die by what that thing says. And I'm like, whatever.
No. Yeah,
you can't. And I mean, throw that thing on me, I'd be 1% every single day probably, but with the way I sleep these days. But yeah, I mean, I think that, and again, it always comes back to that, like, winning is motivating. And an easy way to win is to just like let go of expectations, right? And so if you know in your program, like, ooh, I'm going to be maxing out on this day, it's good to have goals. I would like to hit, a certain number or whatever. But I was always very good at going into workouts with very little anticipation and expectation. And I would never really like anticipate like, this is how it's going to go. It's literally just you're going to do the work no matter what it is. Obviously if you're in pain or something's going seriously wrong, like don't force yourself to complete the workout. However, just go in. I mean, there's been days where warming up, I have been like, this sucks. I would rather be doing anything else in the world. Moving my body right now feels terrible. I don't want to be here. And then later in that workout, I set a PR. You know what I mean? So yeah, you just have to commit to doing it, and just, it is what it is. If it goes great, awesome. If it goes poorly, well, at least you still trained that day. There's I can't ever, in 20 plus years of being in the gym, I can't think of any workout I regret doing.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I never got home from the gym and was like, well, that was a mistake. Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Even, I mean, there's a couple times where I hurt myself. One day I dropped a snatch. I was warming up. I had like 75 or 80 kilos on the bar, and I was training I had a basement gym in my dad's house, and the spatial kind of awareness in a space like that's much different than when you go from a big open gym. And so sometimes that would like, mess with me and other people. And I just like lost my focus for a second, lost my balance. And I dropped the bar behind me, and I fell forward, and the bar landed just flush on my low back. Mm-hmm. And, I had a huge contusion, I mean, massive swelling. And then for like weeks, all the pooled up blood was like draining down my legs. So I had these big black streaks down my hamstrings, and it totally jacked my back up. And it's like, but even still, you wouldn't be like, ooh, I regret working out that. Like I was going to work out that day no matter what. So it had nothing to do. It was just a freak accident. So no one ever goes to the gym and is like, oh, I wish I hadn't done that. It's not a thing.
Yeah. I think the other thing too, interestingly, that I see a lot, and this came up the other day in the gym. So this kid started maybe 6 weeks ago, and he was asking one of the coaches, like, well, why isn't my posture better yet, or this and that? And I was like, what? And he's in his 30s, never worked out a day in his life. Yeah. He sits behind a computer all day. I think he's a video game aficionado. Yeah. And I was just like, hey, I was like, and he's like, well, I've been trying to be more fit since the beginning of the year. I was like, okay. I was like, I've been working out since 14. I'm 32. And I'm still trying to be more fit.
Right.
Like there's just the thing about fitness, there's no end game. It's not, I'm going to get here, be satisfied and stop. It shouldn't be that way. If that is your MO on this, then like don't even start. Don't even bother. Just stay the way you are, because you're going to go right back to it. You're going to end up in the behavior and lifestyles and habits you have. Like if you're not willing to change those and be someone else, I guess, it's not going to work for you. You got to find what works for you, but
yeah, I mean, there's 168 hours in a week. You go to the gym, even if you go 4 days a week, which is a significant amount, you're in there for an hour and a half each workout. You're talking 2, maybe 3% of your total week. Mm-hmm. Is that going to overcome, 30 years of bad habits in a 6-month period? Like, no, it's not.
It's also, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that's why another thing I've learned over the years is I truly think that strength training is the fountain of youth. However, if all of your other habits outside of the gym aren't geared towards your health goals, then, the strength training is going to help, but then you'll just be strong and fat. You know what I mean? So.
And, it's interesting too, because what I see a lot is people come in and they have these limiting beliefs on themselves of, oh, I haven't done this. I've had a bad back, or I have bad knees, and I have all these things. It's like, no. Like you just haven't done them in a while and you haven't used them. Like they can get better. Like every living thing has potential. The other piece though too is people have this expectation or idea that they can change the way they look, but are very limited in the way they think about their own potential as a human. So it's like, right. Oh, I can't do that. I'm not strong enough to do that. I don't want to put more weight on the bar. I could get hurt, or I just can't do that. I can't move that much weight. When most of my job as a coach is just like, put more weight on the bar. Put more weight on the bar. Like you have more in you. Like let's show you what you're made of.
Right. It's an interesting dichotomy. They think they're going to look like Gerard Butler in 6 months, but they also think that they can't bench press 5 more pounds.
Yeah. So it's like right. You don't come in expecting on day one, if you can squat 100 pounds, you have this realistic expectation by, 4 weeks in, you're not going to be squatting 500 pounds, yet everyone wants to look completely different without the physical pieces to get there. And it's like, if those aren't aligned too, that's a big piece of expectations that like we need to put more in parallel with one another.
Yeah, I think, it's just like the example I gave earlier, right? Like the guy that went from 300 pounds to 250 pounds, somebody would look at that person and be like, yeah, they're overweight and out of shape, whatever, this and that. But in reality, they've probably improved their insulin sensitivity, improved their resting heart rate, improve their cholesterol, their blood pressure, their fasting glucose, their, every freaking metric. They're probably improved their mobility, obviously would have improved their strength and endurance. There's so many benefits to exercise that you just cannot see with your eyeballs. Mm-hmm. And on the flip side of that, just because somebody is a healthy weight or maybe has a nice looking physique doesn't mean that they have normal blood pressure or cholesterol, or they don't have sleep apnea, or they don't have mental health issues. And that's a huge one that you can't see. And a lot of people who are severe exercisers are, mentally, they're struggling with mental health, and they're using it as a coping mechanism. And, for sure it's better that they're going to the gym than, I guess, doing cocaine, but it's still maybe necessarily not healthy. And I was, apparently my massage therapist is a great source of topics, because she was telling me about her sister who runs like ultra marathons, and how, that inspired her to run, but she also feels bad because she can't run as far as her sister can. And I'm like, well, it's like, is it healthy to not be able to run for 3 minutes? Like, no, probably not. Right. Like we probably need to improve that metric. Is it healthy to run a 5K or a half marathon or even a marathon? Yeah, probably. Is it healthy to run an ultra marathon? Like, objectively, no.
There's a lot of cardiovascular issues that can come up, and stress hormones, and just,
I mean, I've had friends that have run 100-mile races and they couldn't walk for a week after. It's like, that's objectively not good for your body, and you can make the same argument for strength training too. Like, is, not being able to squat down in a full squat, is that good? No, you need to fix that. Is squatting 100 pounds good? Yeah. Is squatting 200 pounds healthy? Yes. Is squatting 600? Probably not. At that point, you are putting an unnecessary amount of stress on your body. You're probably also having to dedicate so much of your time to that goal. You're probably foregoing other aspects of your fitness.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not telling anyone that they shouldn't run ultras. I'm not telling anyone they shouldn't, try to squat 600 pounds. Do whatever makes you happy. I think all those people are still probably winning over all of us that are sitting on the couch. But ultimately, like, there is a balance. There is a distinct difference between health and sports and competition. And going back to the influencer thing, those people are in competition in a way with every other piece of content on the internet. So it's in their best interest to have the biggest biceps, to have the leanest physique, to have the biggest butt. And so they are probably pursuing those things to an end that's maybe not healthy. And so that's why we need to be selective about having them as role models, I think.
Yeah, I think if you want to be healthy, don't compete in anything.
Right.
Like, because right now, and this is kind of why I'm doing this running thing too, is as a perspective change, is like, I've competed in a sport for many years that is one rep, and it's very specific. And by the end of that training, like, when you're truly peaking and like you're just doing heavy singles and like there's not a lot of general fitness stuff going on, like, it's amazing how fast you notice like your everyday fitness just drop. Like, going up the stairs becomes like you're out of breath, and it's like, I shouldn't be out of breath doing this. But it's like, I'm not doing anything else besides this heavy stuff right now to be specifically adapted for it. Where now I'm on the other side of that, where like everything feels fucking heavy in the gym, but my heart can just go, and like I can just kind of shut my mind off and run. However, the insides of both of my shins are on fire right now, and my hip hurts, and like I feel stiff. So it's trying to find that balance. It's like, now that I'm trying to compete and be as fast as I can and specific as I can, I'm suffering in other ways. So unless you got to find moderation if you want to be healthy.
It kind of that kind of touches on the snake oil that CrossFit sells a little bit, and it's not exclusive to CrossFit. I shouldn't just call them out. And I think CrossFit has certainly come a long way as far as the culture of it is concerned. But, they kind of pitch you on you can be good at everything, right? Like, you can be strong and lean and ripped and durable and blah, 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 blah. And, there are certainly athletes out there, like, and everyone who is a proponent of CrossFit will just point to the CrossFit Games and be like, well, there they are. There's the guys that can deadlift 600 pounds and run a 6-minute mile and have 8% body fat. And it's like, right, but they're also the best in the world and are probably on drugs. So for the rest of us, that's not really realistic.
If you don't believe any CrossFitter is on drugs, Matt Frazier has a whole podcast on Rogan talking about like when he was an Olympic weightlifter or junior weightlifter for the for Team USA, and the WADA and USADA protocol versus CrossFit's private protocol that they have. Very different. They give you a week's notice that they're coming.
Right.
Where USADA and WADA show up at your door of your house. It's like, okay, let's go.
Yeah. 2 a.m.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anyways, go on.
Geez, what was I even talking about? Oh yeah. So, one thing that is nice about, cardio, cycling, running, whatever, is the aerobic system is actually quite pliable. So if you're new to strength training, you will see very rapid results. But if you're anywhere between that, like if you're beyond that newbie phase, strength gains come very slowly where, your aerobic system is very, very pliable. Which, you can fall out of shape pretty quickly, but you can also get back into shape pretty quickly as well. I mean, how long did it take you to go from I can't run 3 minutes to doing like the 12 or 20 minute runs?
I don't know, maybe a month or two.
Right. So you're talking weeks. You're talking weeks to double, triple, quadruple your output basically, which is awesome. Super motivating, I'm sure.
Yep. It was.
But it's hard to be good at everything. And that's always been the debate. I actually was just I do some work with Jason Brown, the one of your buddies, and we were talking about concurrent training versus block periodization, which for those that don't know, block periodization is like we're focusing on these elements of fitness for this block. Maybe it's power output for 8 to 12 weeks. Where concurrent conjugate training, they mix in different elements of fitness throughout a training cycle. And, there's been a lifelong debate about which one of those is better. And I don't think necessarily one is better than another. I think it's very contextual. They both can work. They both have their drawbacks. But for most people, it is, especially you're an adult, you have a family, you're having a normal life, you want to improve your fitness, managing those expectations is going to be such an important part of that. And committing yourself to the idea that even if you don't get the outcome that you necessarily want, it's still worth doing. Because if you can't convince yourself of that, that is when your health will really suffer. And that, I would say, describes my very poor attitude from 2019 to probably 2021 or 22, where I had these severe exercise restrictions imposed on me. I can't lift more than 25 pounds or put more than 25 pounds of pressure on my left shoulder and arm. That takes out 95% of strength training exercises. And I was just like, there's no point in doing any of this. There's no point in going to the gym and doing light bicep curls. There's no point in going to the gym and, just doing leg presses. There's no point in going for walks. This is stupid. I just had I was so angry about these restrictions. And then you realize like, oh, you know what, Tony, if you were actually in decent shape when all of those restrictions were put on you. If I had just done the little basics and stuck with it, I would be much better off than I am now. But, it goes back to that motivation. The thing that I love to do was taken away. It gave me a new appreciation for clients when clients would, say like, I really don't enjoy this. Because when you're younger, when you're in your 20s as a coach, you have that kind of competitive attitude where you're like, just do it. Just who cares if you don't like it? Just do it. Shut up. No one cares, And you get older and wiser and you're like, no, I get it. This sucks. You don't want to do it. I wouldn't want to do it either, So you get much wiser as you experience these things for yourself.
Yeah, we could probably talk a lot about this. Maybe we'll save this for the end because of my battles with the ankylosing spondylitis, yours with the pacemaker. I think we're both in different places with fitness, but
For sure, yeah.
the why of that and how we both think about it. But one thing you did hit on there too is like that's another issue I see, especially with younger people, trainers, people that are getting into powerlifting, weightlifting, especially for like your college to 26, 27-year-olds maybe, is these sports or activities or whatever it is, it might be bodybuilding too. I see a huge problem with that being your whole identity.
Yeah.
That's not good and that's not healthy because I have too been in that point where my condition got so bad for a while when I was about 21. I couldn't even go to the gym and do curls. Like it hurt my low back so bad. So when you have something taken away from you and, you know, it might be an acute injury, it might be something longer term, but like, yeah, you throw your back out and you can't train. Like that's all you know how to do. That's how you cope with everything. That's who you are. And now you can't be that person. Puts major strain on someone's identity. And I deal with this all the time. Coaching clients is, you know, they can't see that. And it's like, look, there's so much fucking more to life than how you look and what you deadlift. Like I tell people all the time, I'm like, is this going to go on your gravestone? Like what you deadlifted at this meet? Because like, no one gives a shit. Like, I care about you. Like, I want to see you accomplish your goals. If this is your goal, I'm going to support you. But at the end of the day, like, stop putting so much on it because, like, in 10 years, you're probably going to, like, get a real job, have kids, have more responsibilities, have more financial stress, and you're not going to be able to train this hard anyways.
Yeah. It's a balancing act. Just, I think that's been the kind of the theme of this whole talk. I think there's definitely been some weights that I've lifted that scared me. Like I was scared to do the lift. Like I was like, this is fucking scary. Like I could hurt myself, you know, even though I knew I was prepared. And you go and you do it. And I think when you overcome that fear and you're not sure if you can do it, but you're willing to try. And then you do lift the weight, you do hit the goal. I think that's incredibly empowering. And I never would want to take that away from people because I do think that's an important element of training. But just like anything else, you have to curtail it somewhere because you're going to get into that point where it's like the gains are not going to come as easy. You are moving from that beginner to that intermediate to that even advanced level. And it could take years to add 5-10 pounds to a lift. And the mental fortitude and the dedication that takes and the other things you have to sacrifice. And then you end up putting so much pressure on that. And if you don't hit it, that can be so devastating to you mentally. And that's not a healthy place to be. So I think it's like we used to really encourage people to sign up for powerlifting meet or a 5K or whatever it is that they like to do. Because it is motivating to have a goal and to set a date and kind of have that finish line to cross. But yeah, to have it become like your entire personality. There was this gym that used to exist in Concord. They're not there anymore. They've sold and rebranded. And I think whoever's running it now is doing a better job of the overall culture there. But the guy would basically go online and like comment on other gyms' social media posts and like talk trash. And his whole personality was just like, they were like a hardcore powerlifting gym. They did like the whole equipped thing. So they're wearing like the triple ply suits and all the space suits and all that stuff. And, you know, their whole identity is just wrapped up in how much weight is on the bar. And that's kind of like one of the big critiques of equipped powerlifting. And if you compete in equipped powerlifting, like I don't care, that's your thing. More power to you if that motivates you to train. But it's kind of, there is that element of like, well, yeah, you know, you were benching 300 and now you put on this special shirt and now you're benching 450. Cool. I understand there are technique differences when you put on the equipment and blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, you're really just like, it's just a means to see that number go up. And I think it's because people have just crossed that threshold, that unhealthy threshold of like, it's their entire personality, it's their entire identity. And it's scary because, look, you turn 40, you turn 45, you turn 50. At some point, you just can't keep getting better as far as the pure numbers. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
You've passed your physical prime.
And so, but what's cool about that still is that the guys you see that are still doing it in their 50s and 60s truly do it because they love it and they feel good.
Yes.
Not because of any other motivation or external motivation, I guess.
Yeah,
So,
you just have to find that healthy balance, that healthy balance of what that looks like. And it's tough, right? Because both you and I are very passionate about Olympic style weightlifting and coaching it and competing. And it does feel great to go to those meets and have your athletes win medals and go to national competitions and make teams and all that stuff. But it's like, you could even like a Michael Phelps, like, where would you rank him in terms of celebrity status? He's like a D-list, maybe, you know what I mean? And he's like the best swimmer that ever lived. Like, ultimately, for a lot of sports, most people just don't care. And so if you're a kind of an amateur athlete, even if you're competing at a high level, I do think it is important to keep that perspective to a certain degree. And for a general fitness person that's just trying to, work out and have fun, you definitely can't get wrapped up in the numbers. Like, it's just a waste of your time.
Yeah. And that's a big thing too. It's like one of my athletes, and she'll probably listen to this and laugh maybe, but I think we've both talked to her actually about, do I choose powerlifting or weightlifting? What do I do? When do I have to divorce one of them? And it's like, you can do whatever you want. Like, why? And like, why does this one number matter? Like, whether it be, 180 kilos or 400 pounds, whatever it is, like, why are we putting these objective numbers on a subjective feeling?
Yeah, one of the topics you and I kind of talked about before we got on air was like talking about the difficulties of maintaining your fitness when you work in the industry. Mm-hmm. One thing that I definitely suffered from during my career was when you have all the knowledge, it can make you a little bit like lazy because you're like, I can just do it whenever I know what needs to be done. I can get to it whenever I want to get to it. And I always had that attitude as an athlete a little bit. And so there's definitely some goals that I had as an athlete that I thought I would have more time. And then, the health issues popped up, and that definitely cut my lifting career short for sure. And there's some numbers that I had in mind and some things I wanted to do that I never did. And, I look back at it and I don't really regret it. You know what I mean? I don't really go, oh man, like, you never front squatted 200 kilos, you loser. Like, I don't think that way. You know what I mean? The only thing I actually regret is like, I regret not getting out of surgery in 2019 and start walking an hour every day. That's what I regret. You know what I mean? It's like, I regret not I regret not doing the simple things that I should have been doing. But I never think like, oh, I never bench pressed 400 pounds. Like, you suck. Like, it just never crosses my mind. And even if I had done those things, like, there's lots of goals I did hit. I look back and go, yeah, that was cool. That was fun. But honestly, like, strict pressing 100 kilos 10 years ago, that doesn't do anything for me now.
Yeah.
So it's like, cool, I did it, but oh well.
Those feelings are very temporary.
Yeah, for sure.
And then even like, we see this, like, I don't know if you experienced this when you competed, but I see this with myself and a lot of athletes too, is like, you can put so much on a meet and then like you're done. And then there is like post meet depression is a thing too. And you see it in the Olympians all the time too, of like, well, now what? Like, I've worked my whole life to get to this goal. I did it. And like, that's my identity gone. Cause like, I'm probably not going to have what are the odds I'm going to train for another 4 years, be injury free, get to this state, be at this high training level again with this level of motivation and discipline. Like, you're pretty much done. So what do I do now?
That's something that never gets talked about. We put so much emphasis in this industry and a lot of facets of life, finances and work and careers. We put a lot of stress on goals and setting goals and how to accomplish goals. And I think that's okay, but no one ever talks about the dangers of hitting your goals.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you get there and it's not as cool as you thought it was going to be. And B, you go, now what? And this is something that you'll actually hear a lot of very wealthy people talk about. They go, I thought my life was going to be so much better once I was a multimillionaire. And then I got here and I realized it's not that great. And don't get me wrong. That's for sure a first world problem. Of course, I'd rather have whatever problems the multimillionaire has than being homeless or not knowing where my next meal is going to come from. Those are real problems. But once your basic necessities are met, adding a big pile of money doesn't necessarily fix all the other things that are going on in your life. Yeah, you want to squat 400 pounds. You want to win, the gold medal at the American Open. Cool. What happens when you do that? Then what? What's not plan B, but what's the next step? It's not always realistic to set that goal higher. Even if you could hit it, the diminishing returns is a question there. But a lot of times, doing more isn't an option. Okay, you won the gold medal. Now what? I guess you could go try to compete internationally. But again, even if you could, is that going to really do what you want it to do for you? Whatever you might think that is. Which is another reason why I'm a big fan of action-based goals rather than outcome-based goals.
Oh,
so
tell me more.
Yeah. I've never given you this speech.
I don't think so. Share it with our listeners.
So for those that don't know, I run a book review social media account, Life on Books. Check me out. And this goes for fitness, this goes for reading, this goes for anything. But a big thing in the book world is like, oh, I want to read 40 books this year, or 100 books, or 300 books, and it kind of comes back to the way our culture is going with hyper optimization and goal setting and all that. But if I read 100 books, is that 100 children's books? Is that 100 comic books? Is that 100 classics? Is that we talking the Count of Monte Cristo, or are we talking some trashy romance novels? What does reading 100 books do for you that's different, fundamentally different than reading 50 books? So what I really preach is like, instead of setting the number of books as an outcome, why don't you just set a daily reading goal in terms of time? So I always tell people, if you want to build a reading habit, read 1 page per day. Most people are probably going to read after work. When you get home from work and or the gym or whatever obligations you have, it's easy to just like sit down, turn on the television, or sit on the couch, scroll social media. It's like, you want to read, you like reading, or you think you should read. It's like, I just don't want to do it. It's like, well, just pick up the book and read 1 page. Anybody can do that. Like, it's going to take you 60 seconds. So easy to do. And you're likely not going to stop at 1 page. You're probably going to read 1 page and be like, you know what? Here, I'm reading. I'm liking this. Let me just read. I'll read like 5. And then you end up reading for an hour. And so by doing that, low expectation, you exceed it. So now you're like, I'm killing it. Right. And
Yep.
Voila, at the end of the year, you've read 50 books, you've read 60 books, whatever it is. And it's the same thing for fitness. Like if you wanted to lose weight and you had a habit of, let's say you eat out 5 days per week, you get lunch out at work every day, you do takeout. So instead of being like, oh, I want to lose 20 pounds as the goal, like that's just an idea. That doesn't actually tell you anything about how to get there, right? But I eat out at lunch 5 days a week. Okay, what if I cut that down to 1 day a week? That's my action goal. I'm only going to eat takeout for lunch 1 day a week. And so the rest of the week, maybe I'll either skip lunch. And so I'm going to, obviously like do a form of fasting, or maybe I'll make meals at home. And typically speaking, homemade meals are going to be less calorie dense than, takeout meals. And so that action will produce the outcome that you want. And the reason why it's so effective is if I set a goal to lose 20 pounds, let's say over a 6-month period, and I get, 3 months in and I haven't lost any weight yet, I really haven't been like doing anything to accomplish that goal, I might go, you know what, it's just not going to happen. The hell with it, and just give up. And then the 6 months gets there and I've lost 0 pounds. I totally even forgot that I even set the goal in the first place. But if I set the goal of I'm not going to eat takeout, I'm only going to eat it 1 day a week, let's say on Fridays. Okay. Wednesday rolls around, coworkers are going out, somebody's last day. Oh, come on, Tony, come with us, get lunch with us. I'm like, okay, I'll go. It's like, yeah, you know what? I failed my goal, but I can start succeeding at my goal again tomorrow. Like I can start again tomorrow and be back to winning tomorrow. Where if I set the weight loss goal and I get, a couple weeks in and I really haven't done anything yet, I can't start tomorrow necessarily like be confident that I'm going to be able to hit my goal at the end of that time frame. So I make the goal an action. And so for me right now, I'm using this on myself. My goal is to walk for 45 minutes a day. And I didn't walk 45 minutes yesterday. I did a stupid little strength training workout, which was, a quick substitute. But it's like, okay, that sucks. I didn't do what I was supposed to do, but guess what? I'm going to walk for 45 minutes today and I'm back on track, baby. You know what I mean? I'm back to winning. So, yeah. And I know that action is going to produce the outcome I want or very near to it. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, it helps me build the habit.
Yep. Building on that too, people have this expectation sometimes that they need to do so much in order to say weight loss, fat loss. If they have these goals, it's like we see so many people come in and they're good. And then something comes up in life and it's like, oh, and they'll be good for a month, 2 months, 3 months even. And then it's like family member died, something at work happened that's like taking them away from the gym a little bit more. And then they just stop. And it's like, or like, hey, I'm going to cancel because I can't come in 4 times a week anymore. It's like, well, hold on. Like you just worked 6 months, you just dropped 20 pounds, whatever. You could, even if you came once a week and just did something to maintain where you've worked, let's get through this obstacle or this, speed bump in your life. And then you're still coming to the gym. You're still like keeping your strength and you can hit it even further down the line. Like do that. And it's just, sometimes it's a matter of talking to people and making them realize like, you don't have to be all in or all out. There can be moderation and balance here too. And yes, like leaving yourself some grace of, shit happens, things come up in life, but then like, I'm back on the horse tomorrow.
Some is better than none, right? Like 4 workouts is better than 3, 3 is better than 2, 2 is better than 1, 1's better than none. Yep. Going back to Jason Brown, something he told me about when he writes a program for somebody, which I thought was super smart, which I wish I had done when I was running Architect and we had our consultation set up the way I was doing it.
Well, share this with me now because I run Architect.
Right. Instead of asking people like, how many days a week do you want to work out? He asked people, worst case scenario, absolute worst case scenario, how many times are you going to work out a week? Mm-hmm. And that's a very different question, right? Like a lot of people, when they come into a gym, especially if they're just getting back into it, they're feeling motivated. They're feeling good. I'm going to dedicate myself to this. I want to be here 5 days a week. I'm going to be here 6 days a week. And it's like, okay, maybe that will happen. And if it does, we can accommodate you, but it's so smart to ask, absolute worst case, what can you guarantee me? And then you go, soccer season's coming up for the kids and I'll have to drop them off, the practice. And so that'll be hard for me to get back to it changes the framework of the thinking. So I love the way he phrases that question. I think it's super smart. Because then, again, if your coach sets you up for a program for 4 days and you only come in 2, you feel like you lost. You feel like you suck. You go, I didn't do what my coach wanted me to do, and I can't do this program, or, this program's not going to work because I'm not doing it the way it's written. But it's like, okay, you get set up for 2 workouts, you come in, you do the 2. Well, I'm feeling motivated. I want to come to the gym today. Like, let's see what Brett can throw at me. And then it's like, okay, let's do something that, let's do a little extra zone 2 cardio, or, maybe we'll take some time to work on this mobility issue that you're really struggling with, whatever it is, but again, we just keep going back to that, like managing the expectations so you can win, because that's going to just motivate you. Yeah, I thought that was so clever by him.
Yeah, I like that. And then I think the other piece too with that is we have to talk about food a little bit too, because that's part of nutrition, fitness, right? So
yeah,
my mother does this. God bless her that I'm talking about her on here. Sorry, Mom. She's struggled with her weight, and it's like she will do all these things and then like of bad habits and completely goes to, I'm changing my whole life over. I'm going to do this fad weight loss, crazy yo-yo diet and lose all this weight and then go back to who I was before. And it's like, you just did so much to overwhelm yourself. And it's like, if we could just control ourselves with food a little bit better, and food's so hard, right? Food is probably the only thing that has a very short-term reward and high reward in our brain with dopamine. And we don't suffer any of the consequences from food immediately. Unless you have a heart attack from like high sodium and you have cardiovascular disease or heart failure. But other than that, your diabetes doesn't happen from that one piece of candy you had.
Right. So, yeah, you're opening a whole can of worms. We talked about, we probably won't go more than 2 hours, but I don't know if we're going to talk about food. This kind of goes back to, and I don't want to sound like, go ahead.
I have a whole podcast coming out on the psychology of food, so that should be up.
I look forward to listening to that. This goes back to that kind of like Facebook argument I had with that guy. And I don't want to sound like a fat guy that's just making excuses, but honestly, we need to take a look as a society about at how our food environment functions. And there is such a strong genetic component to all the variables that come together to determine your body weight and your body fat. And so there's your resting metabolism. So you can have 2 people who are relatively, all the metrics are very similar, but somebody just by nature, their basal metabolic rate is higher. And you were talking about that. Slower. Yours is lower, right?
Yeah.
And so you and another person with a higher basal metabolic rate could eat the exact same foods, and you could gain weight and look out of shape and fat and lazy, and the other person remains a normal weight, and your behaviors were completely the same. And so we need to change how we treat people, based on their outward appearance, based on that information alone. But another thing that is really never talked about, there are food scientists whose job it is to make food more palatable, more craveable, or, and I'm hesitant to use this word, but more addictive, right? And we are eating foods that simply do not exist in nature in the combinations of fats and carbs and salts that make them so desirable to our primitive brain. And some people are hardwired to have a little bit more self-control than others. Like if we can acknowledge that strength, endurance, intelligence, height, whether you're left-handed or right-handed, if all these are genetic factors, why isn't self-control a genetic factor, right? Like why do we take that one element of human behavior? Right. We take that, but people treat it like, oh, it's just a matter. You're lazy. You just didn't want to do the work, Brett. You just didn't want to, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, no, guys, like we know that the prefrontal cortex, and we're getting a little geeky here, but we know the prefrontal cortex is the part of the brain that's really responsible for saying no, essentially, to really simplify it. And we know that some people's prefrontal cortexes are malformed or aren't as strong or as prominent. There's a well-known neurobiologist, Robert Sapolsky, who's written extensively on human behavior. In his recent book, he references a study that shows that low-income kids that grow up in low-income houses, I think by the time they're like 3 or 4, their prefrontal cortex development is so far behind that it basically can never reach like the normal like level. And so those people, and guess who ends up becoming drug addicts? Like people from low income households. Like, that's not a coincidence. You know what I mean? So, you're combining, people with a low ability to say no, essentially, with hyper palatable foods that have been scientifically engineered, and not just engineered to taste better, but also are constantly marketed to you on television and in social media, and there's ad placement in movies. I mean, like think about like when Pepsi became like a huge brand, it was in like Back to the Future, and it was in all these like cool hip movies that were like blockbusters, and like that was like the soda to drink, and it was like everywhere. All that stuff adds up. And then you also have the element of, and this sounds a little, conspiratorial, but like with capitalism, businesses are always trying to provide like better value, better services, outdo their competition. So, Applebee's rolls out a 2 for $20, and then, 99 rolls out, oh, we have something like that, but then you also get a little dessert at the end. You know what I mean? And so it's like portions have gotten bigger over the decades. The caloric density of food has gotten insane. And so we, evolutionarily speaking, like these things have existed for like a fraction of a second compared to how our brains and bodies have evolved. And honestly, like body fat is a natural occurrence because we need to store energy in the event that we are not able to procure food in our hunter-gatherer lifestyles. But like, that's not the environment we live in anymore.
Yeah. There's a lot. So we talk about a lot of this in that podcast, even like genetics, epigenetics, and like,
who's the guest? Who do we have on?
He's actually a chiropractor, but he works at this place called True North, where they do up to 40-day water fast with people to basically reset the dopamine reward system, or the pleasure trap, as he calls it.
Yeah.
And, but we talked about even these epigenetics of like, they did a study with rats, and they put them in a cage, and they had like lily blossoms or lilac blossoms or something. And they would zap half of the rats with an electrical impulse. And then fast forward, they had them reproduce. The babies of the rats that were zapped at the smell of the lilac blossoms were fear avoidant of lilac blossoms without ever seeing their parents exposed to lilac blossoms or the reaction that their parents had. They just adapted these same traits. And it's like, okay, so there's that. And then also too, like, yeah, we talk about that with like willpower and things, and self-control. There's even, in my genetic testing I actually have a gene that says that I like mentally and emotionally respond strongly to strength training.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, there's no surprise that I am a gym rat.
Right. Yeah, I did a 23andMe DNA test way back in the day when it was a fairly early technology. And then I exported the data to a company that kind of analyzes it for training and nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, you're mostly fast twitch and would excel at strength sports. It's like, oh, okay. Funny. I was like, didn't really tell me anything I didn't know, but yeah.
Yeah.
What's really sad is that a lot of people are against this type of information because they have this idea that if you tell somebody that, like, okay, you have a genetic disposition towards X, Y, or Z, that people will use that as an excuse to not do the work. And I totally disagree with that. I think it's the opposite. I think you're like a great example. Like,
yeah,
you were confronted with the information that, like, this sucks, but you're just going to have to literally eat a little bit less than you really want to see the results. And you went, okay, that's what I'm going to do then. You know what I mean?
And run though too.
Right.
So, yeah.
But you go, okay, this is the reality I'm faced with. Let me deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was, like, probably the natural reaction of a lot of people. Sometimes it might take you longer to get there, but that's exactly how I am now. I've come to the realization that it's like, okay, Tony, there's no magical technology that's going to come out tomorrow that can replace your pacemaker and you can go back to lifting weights. So what are you going to do? You know what I mean? It's like, well, really the best thing I can do is walk. So I'm going to walk and I'm losing weight. Funny how that works. So yeah. But with the food too, and I do want to touch on this really quick, is just a really brief overview of kind of how I got here. In 2012, I was diagnosed with an arrhythmia that I was born with. I had a procedure called an ablation to correct it. During that procedure, my AV node was compromised. It was damaged. And so the AV node, for those that don't know, bridges the top and bottom chambers of the heart. So basically the top part of my heart would beat, and not always the beat wouldn't always get to those bottom chambers, which the left ventricle, the bottom left, is the part of the heart that squirts blood out into the body. So important that those parts beat. The damage wasn't so significant that at the time anything had to be done. And in fact, the doctor kind of like downplayed it a little bit. I remember talking with him about it, but he definitely downplayed it. But anyway, over the next couple of years, my heart rate started to drop more and more and more. So my normal kind of heart rate as a 20-something-year-old athlete was like usually like 60, 65 beats per minute. Over the next couple of years, it started to drop into the 30s and then into the 20s, where I started to get some pre-syncope. I actually never passed out, but I would get very close. Like, I would be in the gym coaching somebody, and all of a sudden I would get like a little bit of fade in and out, and I'd be like, holy shit, what's going on? And I didn't know this at the time, right? So there was no expectation set by the doctor that, like, hey, this is going to get worse. Like, he was just like, oh, your heart rate slowed down a little bit during the procedure when we did this thing. So we kind of like tried to undo it. It should be okay, kind of deal. I was like, all right. So I had been feeling worse and worse over the years, gaining weight over the years, being tired, just not having the same endurance. And obviously, like, when your heart is beating at half the speed it should be, like, your resting metabolism is obviously going to be slower and all that stuff. So, plus the stress of opening the gym. And so I was in pretty poor health. I had ballooned up to probably 320 pounds, because I was never a super lean guy naturally. Plus I had a decade plus of strength training. So I was a pretty muscular guy. So I was very heavy. And then I got the pacemaker put in 2016, and immediately felt better. Like, people were like, I never really realized how, like, pale you were until now that you have, like, normal circulation and blood flow. Like, Jesus, you have, like, color back in your cheeks. Yeah. Like, people that, just like random people that didn't even know what was going on would comment about it. It was night and day how much better I felt. Like, as soon as this thing went in, it's like, oh, having a normal heart rhythm is speed is like, oh, I feel good, And so I got back to, like, being able to push in the gym, and I started tracking my macros, and I was eating between 3,000 and 3,500 calories per day. I would eat pancakes, Kodiak pancakes for breakfast every day. And most days I would have an after dinner snack of two cherry frosted Pop-Tarts, which is about 75 grams of carbs, most of which is sugar. And even with all those carbs, all those calories, I was still losing weight. I went from 315, 320-ish down to 250 in less than a year.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that was because my training was super efficient. Like, obviously as a coach, I know what I'm doing, but I mean, strength training, the insulin sensitivity that you can have with strength training to be able to handle that type of carb load is incredible. And so that's why I really encourage people to do it. But now that I don't have that, like I've called it before, that secret weapon or that fountain of youth, you know, I'm in more of a situation where you are, where I gained a lot of that weight back in after 2019, when I broke the pacemaker and I had these exercise restrictions put in place. I slowly started to gain weight over the next couple of years. And now, even, you know, being much heavier, I have to eat around 2,000 calories a day to lose weight. And it's tough. I've always been the type of person that would prefer to work a little harder to eat a little more, because I do have a kind of a high food drive, I guess. But you know, it's just, it's, you realize, like, this is the cards that I'm dealt. Like, it is what it is. And if that means I have to be hungry for, you know, most of the day, that it is what it is. If I want to hit my health goals, I've actually, like you, I've started fasting, and I just find it a very easy way to curtail my calories.
Yep.
You know, if you have a really big, healthy meal with a lot of volume and a lot of fiber in the afternoon, I usually find myself so full that I don't want to eat a ton more. And so sometimes I do only have one meal in a day. And back when you and I first got involved in fitness, people would tell you, oh, if you go more than a couple hours, your body goes into starvation mode.
Yeah.
Turns out that was bullshit.
Yeah.
You know, I think the average person has somewhere around 40,000 calories worth of body fat on their body. So if you're overweight or obese even, you have potentially hundreds of thousands of calories worth of energy on your body. So, you know, like you said, that 40-day water fast, that piqued my interest, because I am kind of curious about trying some longer term fasting, both for the mental and the physical aspects of it. I think I find something very rewarding when you're able to push through like really bad hunger pangs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would. After I do this race, maybe we'll do a fast together for a few days.
Yeah, let me know. I'll be interested in doing it.
Yeah. Actually, the guy that did the podcast, he messaged me a while ago. He's like, I'll do like a 5-day one with you. I was like, I don't know if I want to go 5 days without food, but.
What's the longest you've ever gone?
Me?
Yeah.
20 hours probably.
Okay. Gotcha.
So,
yeah.
I've never tried to do like the 24+ hour fast.
Yeah. I'm not exactly sure. I've done a whole day. Like I woke up, you know, did the whole day, went to sleep, didn't eat. And so I'm not sure like what time I'd eaten the day before or like what time I ate the day after. So I'm not sure of like the total, like if it probably equated somewhere around like 30-ish hours, but yeah, I've done like a whole day fast.
Yep.
It's not too bad. People have told me that even on a 5-day fast, like at the end of the week, when you first eat, like that food tastes like better than anything you've ever had. Like,
well, yeah. So dopamine, right, is anytime we eat something, dopamine is released.
Right.
So that is your reward. That is your feel-good hormone. So when we're constantly bombarding the nervous system with the stimulus of salt, sugar, you know, cheeses, fats, oils, whatever, right? They're very rewarding, but your brain keeps craving it. When you shut that out for a while, it's like it's habituation really of like,
right.
You look at like, you start working in a new place and there's some like tapping or noise in the room and like, you can't you can't like get used to it. And then finally you just settle in and you don't even realize it anymore. But then it shuts off and then you realize how loud it was when it comes back on. You're like, oh my God. Same with food, just in a rewarding sense instead of a negative consequence.
Yeah. Disclaimer for anyone listening, don't do any long-term fasts without some type of supervision from a professional.
Yeah, this is not medical advice. I'm not a real doctor.
Yeah. Just play one on the internet. It's funny. I'm friends with this guy, Ben, who's a weight loss coach. I mean, they super, super specifically focus on that. That's all they do. And, you know, he's got a master's degree in nutrition. He's been in the fitness industry for a long time. And he'll basically tell you like, yeah, it literally just comes down to you need to eat less, essentially, you know, like, and he goes, that I think fasting is great. And so I was like, you know, I asked him, I said, what would you eat, like drink for vitamins and electrolytes if you were to do a long-term fast? And he's like, oh, there's this guy he calls himself the snake diet. He sells snake juice. And if you go on this guy's website, he doesn't really actually, I mean, you can buy the pre-mixed stuff, but it's like out of stock and he has the ingredients, like the recipe, you can just make it yourself. But his whole thing is just like, yeah, just don't eat, like just fast. You know what I mean? Like just, you have so much food on your body in in stored body fat. Like you don't need to eat nearly as much as you think you do, especially if you're significantly overweight. I don't know if you and I have ever talked about it, but back in the day, like the 50s or 60s, I think it was, there was a guy that fasted for over a year.
I did not hear that.
Yeah.
No.
Check this out. So it started as like the doctors wanted to try a short-term, like prolonged fast as a means to kind of like help this guy lose weight. I think it was supposed to be 2 weeks or something like that. And he did the 2 weeks and he was like, you know what? I feel great. I've lost like 15 pounds already. Like I'm just going to keep going. And the doctors were like, oh, all right. And he literally just like kept going and he ended up fasting for like 380 days. He was taking some type of vitamin concoction provided to him from his doctors. You know, cause obviously you'll get like scurvy and shit if you're not getting like vitamins, but, it's just like being a sailor. But, I think he was like 300 plus pounds, maybe 400 plus pounds. And he ended up like dieting down to like 180 ish. And the first thing he ate to break his fast was like a piece of toast with a little bit of butter on it. And they were like, what do you think? And he was just like, meh. Like he was just so like, his brain was just over food. Like, incredible. Mm-hmm. So something to think about.
Yeah. Last thing I want to talk about here before we wrap up is something I've seen a lot of my more long-term fitness athletes that have been doing this for a long time struggle with is the seasons of change with fitness, right? We can't always be doing the same thing forever. And kind of going back to that identity thing of, I think, don't get habituated, like we just said, of just like that noise in the room of like, you know, it sometimes is hard for me as the owner of like, I work in the same walls that I train. It's like, I try to de-stress at the place that sometimes causes me the most stress. And that's not a healthy balance to have where like people come into the gym. I'm like, they're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed at 5 o'clock at night. I'm like, I wish I had this. And over time, those things can change. Like if you've been training in the same gym for 5 years or doing the same sport or same activity, like we see it with weightlifting too. It's like, it is a very monotonous sport. If you want to be really good, you have to be good at doing simple things over and over again, even if they're not exciting to you on a certain day. There comes a time though, when it's like, hey, or I'm doing this or that. I had a long talk with someone not too long ago about, you know, weightlifting and jujitsu. And it was like, I'm doing both, but like, they're doing jujitsu because they thought they needed to because they've been doing it for so long. And it was like, you don't have to. You can go do something else. You can be someone else. You're not a jujitsu person. Just like with, like I went from like bodybuilding to, you know, more athletic, strength and conditioning to weightlifting and now running. And then it's like, what's my next season going to be? Of like, okay, I've done all these things. And there comes a point where it's like for me now in my health, it's like I value health and working out. So that's always going to be a part of me in some modality. But like right now, like my hips are really bugging me and things. And like I have bony overgrowth and both of them. It's like weightlifting does not feel good anymore.
Yeah.
So I can do it like once a week and that's fine. But I'm like, can I continue this on forever? Probably not. So what's viable to do that's a little bit different?
Well, there's that cliche saying, variety is the spice of life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as we get older, we start to realize a lot of these cliches exist for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them aren't so informative, but I totally agree. Environment fatigue is kind of a thing. You know, that's certainly an advantage that the runner has over the strength athlete. You know, the runner's getting outside and running in a variety of different locations and terrains and weather. And mentally, it is as repetitive as running is. There is that beneficial mental element to it where your scenery is changing. Anyone that's worked in fitness for a long time knows that, yeah, it's tough because you're in those four walls all day and then you're supposed to be motivated and have your highest output of the day for your training session in those same four walls. And it's why a lot of at-home fitness equipment ends up being a laundry rack for a lot of people because you're just at home all the time and you know, your motivation's low. You're distracted by other things that, you know, your home occupies your attention with. For sure, sports like Olympic style weightlifting and powerlifting in particular, because they're not, I forget the technical term. They're not an open, whatever. It's not an open playing field where there's a variety of movement like soccer or basketball. You know, if you're a basketball player, every game looks different. And even if you're in the same court, every game plays out in a different way. The movements you do are going to be fairly different, where sports like, baseball, for sure, you know, weightlifting, they're a little bit more fixed in their movement patterns. And so that constant low variety can wear on you mentally. There was a little bit of a phenomenon that would happen when I was coaching a larger weightlifting and powerlifting team, which is where my athletes would go do something like go for a big hike, like a 4 or 5 mile hike, or would just like sign up for a 5K and go run it and wouldn't tell me. And I would be pissed because I'm like, you know, you can get hurt if I don't know what other physical strenuous activities you're doing. And they would always be like, well, I thought you'd be mad because I was doing this stuff that's like off program. And it's like, well, the only reason I would care is that you did something off program is because you are the one that told me that snatching 100 kilos was the most important thing for you. And that's certainly not going to help you do that right now. And if I don't know about it, I can't help you incorporate it and manage it and still hit that goal. So now when your training gets blown up and you don't hit that goal and you're mad at yourself, you're going to take it out on me. And that's why I'm mad that you didn't, you know what I mean? That's why I'm mad you went for a hike. I don't care that you went for a hike. I think that's fantastic. I think you should be doing stuff like that.
Yeah.
But you're the one that was like, I have to snatch 100 kilos or my life is over. You know what I mean? So it was like this interesting, like people would think that like I would be mad because it wasn't going to equate 1-to-1 to them hitting their goal. And I would always tell people this. It's not my job to tell you what your goal should be. That's on you. That is your goal, whatever it is. As long as I don't think it's bad for your health, I will help you achieve that goal. I don't care. You know, if you came in and you said, I want smaller legs, I want, you know, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, look, you're a fit, healthy, normal weight person. I'm not going to like help you atrophy your legs. Okay. But But if someone was like, hey, do I think like snatching and clean and jerking is like the most badass thing? Like, yes, I do. Does that mean you need to feel that way? No. Yeah. If you want to be the best jiu-jitsu player, I will help you do that. If you want to just lose 20 pounds and be able to run a 5K, I will help you do that. I don't care what your goal is. Like, it's your goal. So, to that end, if you go watch a lot of the older, like there's a bunch of like old Soviet weightlifting training videos on YouTube and stuff. They're freaking awesome. A lot of the times, like they're starting their day with like a jog outside or a walk in the woods or, just getting out of the freaking gym. Changing your environment can be huge. And I know you and I have talked about this because strength athletes in particular can be kind of finicky. People don't hit their goals and, I need a new program. I need a new coach. Like this coach isn't good enough. It's not getting it done anymore. And sometimes people just walk into a different space and hit a PR, just like all the time. mentally refreshing.
Yep.
And I've been on the other side of that. I've had athletes come to me and be like, my old coach sucks, and they start training with me and they're going gangbusters and it's like, oh, Tony's the best. It's like, well, I'm flattered, but honestly, it's like not that much to do with me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's new.
So yeah. So, all right, let's give people some actionable takeaways from our discussion here.
Good idea.
So your top 3 ways to stay motivated.
Top 3 ways. So number 1, I think motivation of finding or reflecting on why you're really doing this and realizing it needs to be something more than just I'm doing it to please someone else. It has to be selfishly for you to do. So that's my takeaway on motivation. Expectations. Setting the bar lower than you think you should, probably by about 50%, right? Some good is good, and if we do better than that, then it's even better. Then I set the bar high, and if I don't hit that goal, then I'm a loser and a failure, and I stop doing it because I didn't get to where I wanted to be in the period of time that I thought I should based on the skewed perception we have from social media. And then, don't identify as an athlete or a bodybuilder or whatever. Like, you are who you are. These things don't matter all that much. And changing your environment and being okay with making change to your programming and finding out what set your soul on fire to show up every day and repeatedly do the things that make you more of who you want to be.
Nice.
Do you have anything to summarize there? Anything to add on?
My top 3 would be make your goals actions, not outcomes. Number 2, give yourself some type of visual cue as a reminder of what your goals are. So whether that's like putting a photo, of yourself somewhere that when you walk through a door, or like a little sign that says like, hey, go to the gym today, or like, don't forget your goals or something like that. Because sometimes it's not even a matter of like wanting. It's just like getting distracted by all the other bullshit life throws at you. So giving yourself that reminder is, I think, very helpful. And number 3, I will say, be clearly defined about what it is you want and have more than one way to measure it.
Word.
So there you go. There's combined 40 plus years of experience distilled into 6 hot tips, ladies and gentlemen.
There we go. And you just had to wait 2 hours for it.
Exactly. It was worth it, I hope.
Yeah. Well, Tony, thank you for coming on. It's been a pleasure, and we'll do it again sometime soon. Maybe we can talk about ADHD, business ownership, and training with chronic health conditions.
Let's do it. I will probably see you in the next couple of weeks, Brett. Thanks for having me.
All right. Take care.
84% of you that listen to this podcast frequently do not hit the follow button. If you've enjoyed any of these episodes, could you do us a favor and hit the follow button, leave a rating, and maybe leave us a review? It helps this channel more than you know, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests get. If you'd like to know more about training in person or online with Brett's Gym, Architect Fitness, please follow us on social at ARKITECT Fitness on Instagram, or visit ARKITECTFitness.com. Or if you want to rehab with Barbell Therapy online or in person, check out @barbell.therapy or visit barbelltherapyandperformance.com. Thank you for taking the time to listen.